TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening. It's coming up to 1 minute past 6. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The FIFA World Cup is underway in Qatar, with Ecuador, as we go to air, beating the host nation in the first game of the tournament. The score's currently 2-0. It's the first time the tournament's been held in a Muslim country in the Middle East, and it's been overshadowed by a number of controversies. FIFA's hoping action on the pitch will turn the spotlight back on the football. Our reporter Paul Hawkins is in Doha for us and spoke to our fans about their thoughts on the tournament.
And I can't fault the hospitality of the people, the friendliness of the people. I know there's this big East meets West thing, but, you know, you just have to respect people and their cultures. And it's wonderful. And actually, I think no alcohol is not a bad thing.
It's typical England, isn't it? They've always won it before they've kicked the ball, haven't they? And then it's a massive disappointment. Massive disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, but how are you enjoying it, sir?
That's great. Very good. Very nice.
Yeah?
Yeah, people are great here. Yeah, it's really nice, clean, safe feeling place. Good.
And I can confirm Ecuador have won that game 2-0. England manager Gareth Southgate has confirmed his team will take the knee ahead of their first game against Iran. The Three Lions have made the controversial gesture against racism and inequality in more than 33 straight matches since COVID, and will do it again when they kick off their campaign tomorrow. And let's not forget about Wales, of course, preparing for the country's first World Cup appearance in 64 years. Captain Gareth Bale's been talking about how disappointed he was as a child, unable to watch his country play on the world stage. Well, the Welsh star says he hopes his team's achievement will inspire a generation.
It's just one of those moments that is a massive piece of history in our country, something that we've all wanted for a long time. And like I said, to be the team that was to get over the line and do that for our country is incredible. And we know we have the support of a nation back home. No matter what happens, as long as we give 100%, our country will love us for that.
Comedian Joe Lycett has shredded £10,000 of his own cash in protest at David Beckham's role as an ambassador at the Qatar World Cup. Online footage shows the comedian throwing 2 bundles of notes into a shredder. Mr. Lycett had issued an ultimatum to the former England footballer after it was reported he'd signed a deal with the tournament hosts worth up to £10 million. The comedian offered to donate the money to LGBTQ+ charities if Beckham ended the sponsorship. Homosexuality is still illegal in Qatar. In the US, 5 people have been killed and 18 injured in a shooting at a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs. Police have named the suspect as 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldridge. He's currently in custody and receiving treatment for his injuries. The motive for the attack is not yet known. Deputy Police Chief Adrian Vasquez has thanked those clubgoers that risked their own lives trying to stop the attacker.
Initial evidence and interviews indicate that the suspect entered Club Q and immediately began shooting at people inside as he moved further into the club. While the suspect was inside of the club, at least 2 heroic people inside the club confronted and fought with the suspect and were able to stop the suspect from continuing to kill.
Back here, police in Nottingham have launched a murder investigation after 2 children were killed in a fire at a flat. A woman's in a critical condition in hospital. In a statement, Detective Chief Inspector Greg McGill said these are tragic and very sad circumstances. We've established the fire was started deliberately. Police are appealing for witnesses in the Fair Isle Close area of Clifton. And Rishi Sunak says more must be done to tackle climate change after a funding agreement was reached at COP27. The so-called Loss and Damage Fund will help developing nations bear the cost of disasters such as drought and flooding. However, a decision on exactly which countries should pay has been left until COP28. Mr. Sunak welcomed the measures, but said there can be no time for complacency. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. More at the top of the hour. See you then.
Head to this evening's weather, and conditions will be blustery and showery for many, but there'll also be some dry and clear weather too. Here are the details. Starting off in the southwest, where there'll be a mixture of clear spells with some showers too, turning very wet and windy by the end of the night. Over in the southeast, most of the showers will have cleared away, meaning it'll be a dry and mostly clear end to the day. Mostly dry with clear skies across much of Wales, though a few coastal showers are still possible, turning wet and very windy in the south overnight. Let's go over to the Midlands now, and there may still be a little showery rain at first this evening, but this will quickly clear away northeastwards, leaving a mostly dry night before rain arrives by dawn. A rather cloudy evening across the northeast of England. Here we can expect further outbreaks of showery rain, but it'll turn dry and clear overnight, leading to some ice and fog on Monday morning. Dry and clear for much of eastern Scotland this evening. Further west, some showery rain is likely, and there'll also be some rain for Orkney and Shetland too. A mostly dry end to the day for Northern Ireland. Plenty of clear skies here too, meaning it'll be a chilly start to the night before rain arrives later. Later on, wet and very windy weather will sweep in from the west through the night, with some of the impact felt on Monday morning. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
I'm Gloria de Piero. Welcome to Gloria Meets, a different political programme where we get out across the country to learn about your lives and what you think, and a different style of political interview where we get the big names to open up and tell us who they really are.
Coming up, Labour's Jess Phillips.
My calorie intake must have been, literally less than 500 calories a day. I was starved myself.
Former Home Secretary Jackie Smith.
As I grieved for my job, so I've grieved for my marriage, which was a very happy marriage of 33 years. And in some ways, I will never get over that.
And senior Conservative MP Caroline Noakes.
Who's going to believe me, and what will this do to my career if I talk about it?
Jess Phillips, great to see you. We are going to talk a bit about politics, but a lot about you, because this is called The Real Me, and it's supposed to humanise politicians, and I think you have some very human stories to share, actually.
I like to think so.
But first of all, you're known, if people know you in politics, a leading feminist. Was there a moment or experience that led you to become a fighter for women's rights?
I think working in women's refuges, you come across certain cases, and I worked in women's refuges and with victims of sexual exploitation and grooming for years before becoming a Member of Parliament. And there was one particular case of a young woman, lived in the care system, abused as a kid, then had her children, like was put into prostitution as a kid, into adulthood, had her children removed from her, and she was just sort of would spring back into service. And I just thought that every single agency, policy that anyone had ever tried with good intention to make had just failed this kid. I remember just thinking, God, you know, we're doing something wrong, like constantly we're doing something wrong, and I've got to try and get into politics to change those systems, basically. But yeah, she, and I think about her almost daily. She's like I don't know what happened to her in the long run. I doubt it was good. But yeah, this sort of constant failure that I watched women and children go through as a worker, I think that almost certainly is the thing that made me decide to step up.
We're going to talk more about politics later in this interview, but I want to talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
You have had some very human experiences, common experiences for women. When you were a teenager, you had anorexia.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know when that was and what brought that about.
It's almost impossible to say, really. I can't remember. There was no sort of like definitive moment. I've got to say, I mean, I was a teenager in the 1990s, and being anorexic was pretty de rigueur. Like it was when we sort of first knew about it all, and quite a few of my friends were very, very severely ill, hospitalised, institutionalised, with very, very severe anorexia, and I was never at that level. But I think that, I mean, originally it started out as I would make myself sick, so I was, but I would never. It was never really about being thin.
Really?
Never ever. I was really thin. I was, I was a teenager. And
so you started making yourself sick.
Yeah, and I don't remember when I started to do it. And at first, you tell yourself, because you've been out on the lash or something, that you're making yourself, like when you've drunk too much and you make yourself sick to make yourself feel better. Yeah. When you've been drunk. So I think I sort of started with. And then it became sort of like my personality. Like my friends would say, oh, she's always vomiting, isn't she? Or she's always sick when she's drunk or something. This was when I was like 14,
right.
15. And it just became a thing that I did just to sort of control situations, make myself feel in control. I don't know why particularly I felt out of control. It was the 90s though, and, standards were different to how they are now, and the things would happen to me and my friends that if now they were happening to my teenage kids, I would be appalled by them. Sort of, it was cool for basically like 20 and 30-year-old men to come and pick us up in their cars.
Yeah, totally.
That was, it wasn't just cool, it was currency. You were the coolest kid. Yeah. If some bloke in a Vauxhall Nova came
if they
to
had
pick
a private number plate, then even bigger deal.
And they'd be playing their music loud, and they pick you up while you were in your school uniform. Yeah. It wasn't just that there was any safeguarding concerns not raised about me. It was totally normal and totally regular that sort of thing would go on without question.
But so, because there's sort of a debate about eating disorders, on the one hand, it's about control. Other people say that it's because women are subjected to constant images, and so...
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, isn't it? I don't think that the constant images make every woman react in that way, but if you have incidences of trauma or concern, or you're frightened about your environment, it's never... It's almost impossible for me to talk about it in these terms because I didn't feel like that at the time. I can paste it onto my teenage self. I thought I was the queen of the bloody world at the time. Often when people say, what would you say to your 16-year-old self? I say, take yourself down a peg or two. Like, you're nowhere near as good as you think you are.
When did you... So you started off with bulimia.
Yeah.
So you started being sick, you then decided to starve yourself.
And I never considered... Oh, then actually I went to university and I got I think of it a bit like when you become a member of parliament, put on like a stone. When you become a member of parliament, like the tea room stone, because you're not living the life that was your ordinary pattern of life. And so when I went to university, like my parents were really quite strict about like eating healthily, so I just ate pizza all the time, and became really quite unhealthy, and I put on weight, and then the sort of dramatic reaction to that was then that I think that the way that I eat, whether I'm putting on weight or trying to lose it, and I will do that for the rest of my life, and I will live with that fact. I will never get away from that. Both are disordered. It's just disordered eating of some variety or another. But then in the reaction to that, there was about a year where I only ate popcorn that I made myself, and my
This is at university?
This is at university. My calorie intake must have been, literally less than 500 calories a day. I would starve myself. Even as I'm saying this, there was no pathway in my mind that was making me, it was an initial reaction to having put on weight and then wanting to lose it. But yeah, I became so controlled about the things that I ate that when I left university, in the middle of university, I must have weighed about 7 stone, and I'm 5'8". So
then you sort yourself out, like you say. Probably all women have an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah. But we say I sort myself out. No, I will have disordered eating for the rest of my life. I emotionally eat. I will drop my weight massively and dramatically. I'm absolutely brilliant at going on a diet. When people say to me, "Oh, how do you stick to it?" and they're sort of jealous of it, I'm like, it's not necessarily a good thing that I can stick to this. This is. I am obsessive. I am all one way or another. And it's like an addiction of any sort. It's like an addiction of any sort that you will overeat to cover your emotion, and you will then undereat to feel in control. I wish I could stop it, but that's life, isn't it? I genuinely just feel like it's not causing me any particular massive grief at the moment. It is just the way that I live. I've got family. I eat with them most of the time. My husband's an excellent cook. I'm not unhealthy. I've tried to make it be about health rather than anything else. But I'm frankly just kidding myself. I've been groomed all my life to think that women should look a certain way. I wish that I could say that I felt differently and my feminism has helped me feel differently, but I don't.
Okay, really interesting. You spoke in Parliament during the debate about having an abortion and the process involved in that. How old were you? Try and do the maths.
In 2006, I would have been about 24. My eldest son I had when I was 23, and he was, I literally can't remember, but he was something like 5 months old at the time.
Goodness me. Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's hard. Was it hard, actually?
It was hard having a 5-month-old baby. Yeah, it was incredibly hard being 23 and having a 5-month-old baby, and then finding that I was pregnant immediately afterwards. Honestly, I still don't know actually how it happened. I don't remember my life at all at that time. It was just like living in a daze. But I remember coming downstairs every single time I've been pregnant in my life. The moment I've seen the pregnancy test, I've known instinctively in that moment exactly what I felt about it and what I was going to do. I've had a miscarriage as well as 2 live births, so I know that, actually, and on that occasion, I was not happy to be pregnant. So I've known instantly. And so I knew instantly in that second when I saw the pregnancy test, I could hear my baby crying downstairs that I didn't want to have another baby. And I went downstairs and I said to my boyfriend, now my husband, I said, "Oh God, I think I'm pregnant." And he was just like, he just put on a brave face. He's like, "I guess we're going to have another baby." I was just like, no. And he was like, oh, God, thank God. But no, I didn't, it wasn't stress. The thing that was stressful was waiting.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was...
appointment.
Yeah, so having to go and justify yourself in the appointment. So I had to go... I'm very pleased to say that it didn't seem to be such a thing back then in 2006 that there was protesting and things outside abortion clinics, so I didn't have to encounter any of that. I had to go to the doctors, and my doctor said to me, in a sort of slightly judgmental way, I mean, more than slightly, completely, I don't sign off for abortions. I don't do it. My GP, we have a doctor in the practice who does that. I'll make you an appointment with her. And I just remember being like, okay, like on moral grounds, I don't do it. And they're completely entitled to do that. Yeah. There isn't another health area they're entitled to do that in, incidentally.
Should they be entitled to do that?
Well, look, I think that if you go into the medical profession and you have very, very strong feelings about this, then, you know, I do, as long as there is a provision available, which at my GP surgery there was, I can see that you can work in that environment. But I think if you're going into general practice where this might come up, it is a health issue, not a moral issue. It is a women's health issue. And so I do think that we need to make sure that in every GP practice, and there are very vulnerable groups where that would, you know, that initial no would be damaging. And so we've got to make sure that the patient is the principal, not the doctor's morality. But, you know, there was a doctor, a lovely, lovely doctor at my old GP surgery who then had to sign it off for me. And then I had to go and get another doctor at the clinic to sign it off for me because as a woman, I can't make that choice by myself without two people signing it off. I don't know why one doctor isn't good enough to sign off my need for that. So I then had to go and I had to have a scan to date it. And then I had to wait for something like 6 weeks.
Oh, gosh, Jess. Can't believe how quickly it's gone. I want to ask you one final question. You stood to be Labour leader at the last leadership election when Keir Starmer was elected. You withdraw early in that contest. Why on earth did you do that?
You seem angry, Gloria. A few reasons. That I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I hated everything about it. It made me feel miserable. From the very second that I agreed to do it, I felt sick and like I wasn't enjoying it at all. Horrible. And I remember just it was Christmas, wasn't it? And just having to like go to one thing and have like 5 sort of apparatchiks standing around me telling me what to do, and then I was like, oh my God, I've got to get my kids some Christmas presents, and then running around the shops and then going back to something else. I just was like, I hated it. I like going out dancing with my friends. I like being a normal human being. I like living a life, and I hated not being able to do that. The second reason was there was no way that I was going to win, and so why would I put myself through something so grim when Keir Starmer was very clearly sort of on the pathway to success. But one of the reasons that I did it was to open up the Labour Party to people who aren't that interested in politics, which I think I have a particular skill for, and get loads of people to join the Labour Party. So I dropped out at the point where you could no longer join.
Yes or no? Will we ever see Jess Phillips, leader of the Labour Party?
I mean, I'm winding down now. Anyway, I don't go out dancing with my mates as much as anyway. COVID's put the kibosh on basically my desire to go out dancing. But I think it's probably quite unlikely, but I wouldn't say never. I wouldn't say that I would never run again because I just don't think that's honest, because I might do. But I really, I can't deal with the machine.
Yeah.
I'm not good in a machine.
I totally understand it. And that's why lots of people think you should run for Labour leader. Jess Phillips, you have been a joy. So frank, open, interesting as ever. Thank you, Jess Phillips.
No worries.
Coming up, former Home Secretary Jackie Smith.
As I grieved for my job, so I've grieved for my marriage, which was a very happy marriage of 33 years. And in some ways, I will never get over that.
And senior Conservative MP Caroline Noakes.
Who's going to believe me, and what will this do to my career if I talk about it?
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Jackie Smith, 15 years ago, you were appointed as Britain's first woman Home Secretary. What's the toughest thing about that job?
Well, it doesn't feel that long ago, for a start. In some ways, it feels like yesterday. I think the toughest thing is that you suddenly realise that you are responsible for the security of the country, our borders, against counter-terrorism, for communities against crime. That feels like a great weight, actually, on your shoulders. But I have to say, it's also a massive honour. And for the 2 years that I did it, saying I enjoyed it would probably be going too far, but I'm enormously proud that I got the opportunity to do it.
And you mentioned securing our borders. They don't seem remotely secure at the moment. We didn't have a small boats crossings crisis until fairly recently, actually. What's gone wrong in your view? Why can't we control our borders anymore?
I mean, to be fair, we did, of course, have a problem with people climbing onto lorries and coming into the country. That was solved by working with France, by sending our border guards over into France, by finding ways in which we could clamp down on those who were responsible for it. I think what's gone wrong is that we sort of decided that somehow or another this was something we could control ourselves without working alongside our European partners. I won't even get into Brexit, but actually, ironically, I think in some ways that's made it harder for us to control our borders. So actually this week, I was quite pleased to see the Home Secretary over in France talking to her counterparts, trying to find a way through it. But there's going to need to be a lot more than that done in order to protect not only our borders, but also the poor souls that are actually putting themselves and their families into completely unfit ships and little boats and coming over here.
When we think about the last two Home Secretaries, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman, very, very tough talking. Is that a necessary part of doing the job? You have to sound tough.
Look, I think what's more important is that you act tough and you act effectively rather than you talk tough. Sometimes, and this would be my argument about both Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, talking tough is a substitute for being successful. And, you know, we can all dog whistle, we can all talk as tough as you like, but in the end, if you don't make the country safer, if you don't tackle crime, if you don't help keep us protected from terrorism, if you don't secure our borders, you can talk as tough as you like. You're not actually doing the job of Home Secretary, which is to keep the country and our communities and our people safe.
Now, you had to resign from that job. We're familiar with seeing politicians having to resign from big jobs, particularly in recent times. How tough is it to have to
to resign? What goes through your mind? How does it happen?
It's, you know, I had gone through a lot of difficulties in terms of the expenses scandal, which had impacted on my family. I was only able to do the job because my then husband actually helped to care for our children, helped to work with me in the constituency. I just couldn't carry on doing it in those circumstances. And then, of course, to add to the agony, a year later I lost my parliamentary seat as well, which in some ways was expected, but nevertheless was very difficult. I was talking to somebody just this morning, actually, who's just finished being a sort of mainstream politician. It's enormously difficult. It's been your life. You know, you don't get to be an MP, as you well know, Gloria, without putting a lot of effort into it, putting your life into it, really. And then all of a sudden, that's taken away from you. It's a period of grieving. It's a complete transition of your life. In some ways, it's a liberation, of course. And I'm very lucky, 12 years on now from that happening, that I have a lovely life. I have a very interesting and I hope useful career and fun as well. But at the time, it is like losing the thing that you've worked all your life for, and it's enormously difficult and takes some time to get over.
Any words of advice for any of the people who are going through that very process now? I mean, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, I mean, the list is pretty long, actually, but, you know, 2 prime ministers having to forced out in just recent weeks, really.
I know, and for Liz Truss, although I sort of absolutely deplore what the damage she's done to the country on a personal basis, I think to myself, actually, you know, you are relatively young and you didn't even have a period of time as a Prime Minister to build up that any sort of record. So I feel personally sympathetic to her. I think you need to take a bit of time, you need to get your head together, you need to decide what it is you can do. Sometimes people think that because you've been an MP or a minister, you can just step into other roles. It's not like, I mean, you're doing brilliantly, but you're doing something.
I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky.
And also, you had those skills anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite difficult to find that life after frontline politics, but it's not impossible. And I think it's important to find the things that you feel passionate about and that you think you can contribute to. And I've been really lucky to be able to do that in the NHS, in children's social care, a bit of commenting on what's going on in politics, a bit of working abroad as well.
Coming up,
I actually met my partner at yoga. So there we are, that's another. Go online and go to yoga. That's my recommendation if you're in your late 50s and you end up alone.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening and whenever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, it's your news.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
You mentioned the support that you had from your family and the impact on your family of when you were going through the toughest times in politics. You just turned 60, looking fabulous. A couple of years ago, you separated from your husband after 33 years of marriage.
Yeah.
You did that at 58 years old. I mean, some women might be thinking, and me myself included, actually, I love my husband very much, but like, oh gosh, would I bother? 58. Tell me why I'm talking nonsense.
Well, when it first happens, that is what you think. You know, I mean, if there are women out there to whom this is just happening now, let me say to you, as my sister and my very close friends used to say to me at the time, it will get better. And I used to look at them and think, no, that's it, end of my life, never will. Well, let me just say, it does get better. You know, I mean, as I grieved for my job, so I've grieved for my marriage, which was a very happy marriage of 33 years. And in some ways, I will never get over that. But I have got a new life. I've got a very lovely new partner. I've realised that it's possible to come through those times. So let me just say, I hope it never happens to you, Gloria, but let me just say to those to whom it has happened, things really do get better.
All right, you don't have to answer this one, but I'm intrigued now. How do you meet people? Like, do you meet them online? Is it friends of friends? And like I say, don't tell me anything you're uncomfortable with. I was just wondering, just in case it does happen.
If you're looking for help with your dating profile, come to me, Gloria. There are dating apps. I have used them. I actually met my partner at yoga. So there we are, that's another. Go online and go to yoga. That's my recommendation if you're in your late 50s and you end up alone.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Right, Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah.
How do you get invited onto Strictly Come Dancing? Do you get a letter, a phone call? How does this happen?
Well, let me say, first of all, you know, if you are in your late 50s, your marriage splits up, you're beginning to think, oh no, I'm getting a bit old. What, you know, the thing you think of as your main job is over. There's not much better than Strictly Come Dancing, can I say? And what happened, and I did it in 2020, which was the sort of real heart of COVID, I got an email out of the blue earlier on in the year, around about, I think it was April, May, something like that, possibly even slightly earlier than that. And they said, you know, would you be interested in doing it? And the producers heard your podcast and knows that you were the first female Home Secretary and wonders if this might be something you'd be interested in doing. So I sort of, you know, it's a bit like when Gordon Brown said, would you like to be the Home Secretary? And it's a slightly sort of, and then I thought, well, okay, I'll talk to them. So then you talk and it carries on over several months when they're obviously, well, first of all, in that year, they were trying to work out whether or not they could do Strictly at all, given the pandemic. And then sometime around July, they came back to me, having sort of kept in touch with me, and they said, we want you to do it. And I have to say, you know, despite not succeeding to be the best dancer ever to do Strictly, I absolutely loved it. It was a massive adventure. Having the makeup, having the sparkles, doing something completely different as far as I was concerned was just a sort of fantastic rebooting of my life in very many ways.
That's lovely. Matt Hancock, he is getting a bit of stick at the moment. He is a serving MP. He is in the jungle. Two questions, I suppose. Should a serving MP ever take part in a reality TV show?
Look, we both know what it's like when you've got constituents that you're answerable to. I don't think if you're a serving MP, you should take yourself away from your constituency for the length of time that Matt Hancock has. So I think he made a mistake there. I don't want to be super sanctimonious about it because I think, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, I think there are people in that jungle who've got more to answer for, Boy George for one, than probably Matt Hancock has about going into it. I mean, he will have a COVID inquiry at some point or another that he'll need to report to. So, no, I don't think he should have done it. I think his constituents will have something to say about it. And I suspect it means he thinks he's at the end of his political career as well.
Would you go into the jungle?
Why would I want to go into the... I've had sequins and gorgeous makeup. Why would I want to go and roll around in mud and chew on some animal's genitals, Gloria?
Jackie Smith, it's been a pleasure to talk about your life and times and your very positive outlook on the next stage of your life. Thank you.
Coming up, Senior Conservative MP Caroline Noakes.
Who's going to believe me? And what will this do to my career if I talk about it?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
Caroline Noakes, we were both elected in 2010. Just watching you from afar, it seems like you found your voice in the last few years, that you're a very different politician to the one that entered Parliament in 2010.
Yeah, and I think one of the harshest criticisms I ever heard about myself was that I was just a Tory bot. And, I'm really not. And I think being a government minister for 3 years, that was incredible. I mean, it was a fascinating experience, but that coming to an end gives you some freedom. It gives you the ability to actually say what you think. And I think I've also become a much more mature politician. I've got to the point in my career where actually I'm going to say what I think, not give people the line to take, which is incredibly boring for interviewers to listen to. But actually, it doesn't give the public a sense of what's really going on and what you really believe in.
Yeah, it's much more liberating when you make that decision, I reckon. Now, let's just look at what's going on in Parliament. You're chair of the Women and Equalities Select Committee. Recently, we've had an MP who's resigned after a report found he made unwanted and unwelcome sexual advances to a junior member of staff. It's not the first example. I could run through a list of people who have been exposed in the media for making unwanted sexual advances to people, for MPs who have been reprimanded for bullying their staff What is going on in Parliament? Are these bad apples?
So I've long since said we should have a much tighter system of discipline, codes of conduct, that the whips from the different political parties should work together to make sure that everybody understands what the rules are. Now, I was told a while ago that if I thought there was ever going to be an explicit code of conduct of what MPs could and couldn't do, I was deluded. Actually, I think we need that. But I don't know whether it's any different to any other workplace, apart from the fact that if you were to behave like that in Tesco's or in a big accountancy firm, a bank, you'd be out on your ear. And what we have in Parliament is the inalienable right. If your electorate have put faith in you to be their elected representative, there is currently no mechanism that can be used to stop you from going into that place. Now, look, I think that's wrong. I think everybody wants to see something much more restrictive, so that when you've got people who have been charged with serious sexual offences, is it right that we can't stop them from coming into Parliament? But I think the numbers are relatively small, but the cases are very serious, and we should be looking at it through that prism, not, well, it's only a tiny number, but actually, why are these serious incidents happening? What is it about power? And I'm convinced that sexual harassment is not about sex, it's about the exploitation of power from one individual over another. And we absolutely have to redress that imbalance and make sure that young people working in Parliament, women working in Parliament, young gay men, I sometimes think that they are the most vulnerable, that we give them a mechanism where they know that they're going to be protected.
Why do you say that young gay men may be the most vulnerable?
Because people don't talk about it. And I think that there is still a taboo around homosexuality. And there have been some cases where I can think of individuals who've harassed both male and female members of staff. And the female member of staff has had all of the sympathy, all of the column inches in the press, and there'll be this, and also when it comes to the young gay man. And I think that that's really fascinating insight into how our psychology still works around homosexuality, and people are still afraid of coming out in 2022. Now, you know, that shouldn't be right. We should all be perfectly free to be who we are. So that worries me to a huge extent, that there are still young men who are absolutely terrified of coming forward.
Looking a bit at your own experience, and you've talked about your own experience. So last year, you accused Stanley Johnson, the father of the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, of inappropriately touching you at the Conservative Party conference. This was back in 2003, when you would have been a young delegate or young Conservative activist. What happened?
I was at the reception of a hotel, checking into my B&B on the Blackpool seafront, and he smacked me on the backside and said, "Oh, Romsey, you've got a lovely seat." Lives with me to this day, and I'd told plenty of people. I'd never reported it as a complaint because I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed. And C, I genuinely thought it would be a lot easier to get rid of Caroline Noakes, you know, up and coming candidate for marginal seat of Romsey, than it would be to get rid of somebody like Stanley Johnson, who was a former MEP. He at the time was a candidate somewhere down in the West Country. And I just thought, who do I go to? Who's going to believe me? And what will this do to my career if I talk about it? Now, look, I'm a much older, seasoned politician now. And although I was accused of lying by one former cabinet minister, the account is completely accurate, and people listen to it. And I wanted to convey the message. If I'm still not prepared to talk about it and report it, then how are younger people in politics ever going to have the courage to speak out about the hideous experiences that some of them have been through and continue to go through?
His response when your accusation was put to him was that he had no recollection of Caroline Noakes at all. How did you feel when you heard his response?
Completely unbothered. That is a man who can have no impact upon me, and I'm not interested in his views on anything.
Is his sort of unwanted advance at you, is that the only advance of a sexual nature that you have been subject to in your time in politics?
No. But I've been around politics a very long time, when I was a lot younger, thinner and prettier. And to be quite frank, it's commonplace. And some much more serious than others. And mostly you develop an incredibly hard shell. So it just bounces off. It's easier in Parliament to allow yourself to become one of the lads to just laugh off incidents. And actually, the view I take now is, look, we can't do that. we as women can't do that. Nobody should do that. And not only must we be brave enough to report and talk about and highlight the incidents that happen, but we should also be prepared to confront and call it out when we see it happening to colleagues, to young staffers. And I think that's a huge responsibility that I feel now. Look, I'm a 50-year-old woman now. It takes quite a lot to make me flinch, but I still see much younger people in Parliament who are subject to unwanted advances, who talk about the bullying and harassment that they received. And, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us, wherever we see it happen, whether it's in Parliament, whether it's on the tube, to call it out when you see it, to humiliate those people who still think it's okay to inappropriately touch others, who think it's okay to make unwanted comments. And that's why I think things like making public sexual harassment a specific crime are so important. It just sends a message, look, this is intolerable, we're not going to accept it any longer, and all of us have a role to play in calling it out.
And you wrote about an experience that you'd had as a teenager with a then boyfriend who, and you said that your friend stepped in and helped you recognise it wasn't normal to allow another person to dictate your every action, how you spent your time, what you wore, what you weared. Do you have any specific memories of that boyfriend and how he enacted any of those terrible things?
Do you know, my specific memory of that time is about a brilliant girl called Helen, who was my best friend at college, who every single day would go and buy me a 15p iced bun and stand over me whilst I ate it, because she knew that I was monitoring my weight to such an extent that any excess calories were absolutely forbidden. And that's how I choose to remember it, that actually it's about female empowerment. It's about recognising not only in our own relationships when they're toxic, but in others, giving other women a safe space to just ask for help and highlight what they're going through and be confident enough to talk about experiences. And that really matters to me. And it's why I think that we absolutely should be stepping in and making sure that 16 to 18-year-olds have PSHE at sixth form college, because it's not statutory at the moment.
That is sexual and relationship education.
Sex and relationship education. And I just think we have to give those teenagers between 16 and 18 who will be going through their first relationships, who will be experiencing all sorts of things that they haven't, you know, they might have been taught about it in school, but they're not doing the practical. So, you know, we have to, when they get to that later teenage stage, give them safe spaces and environments where they can talk about what they're experiencing. And that was the context in which I first mentioned that, is that I feel really strongly that if it hadn't been for Helen, I don't know what would have happened to me. I'd probably be this little stick person to this day.
Oh, we all need Helens.
We do all need Helens
in our lives. You don't have to answer this, but I feel like I should ask you, is that the only toxic relationship you've ever been in?
Yeah, I think so, pretty much. I mean, look, I'm a 50-year-old single woman. And actually, I think we can all look back on experiences that we've had over our past and think, you know, that wasn't great. And why didn't I speak up then? And I wasn't comfortable with that. Why on earth did I put up with that for as long as I did? And you know, there's sort of all sorts of little bits of your past that turn you into the person that you are today.
Interesting, because, you know, the sort of cancel culture, the trans debate, anti-woke, woke, there's a lot going on at the moment. You called on the government to introduce gender-neutral toilets in schools to make life easier for trans and non-binary young people. Some parents will applaud you for that. Many parents will take a very different view. What do you say to those parents who say, well, no, because my daughter might be scared, or whatever it is?
So this is driven from my view of Romsey School, the main block toilets in 1983. Girls' loos, the most terrifying place in the entire building. And it is the 1980s, and they're very different today, but thick with both hairspray and cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
And arriving aged 11 and being told by friends, for goodness sake, don't use the main block loos. They're terrifying. And I remember that. Now, I was just a geeky little 11-year-old. Imagine if I'd been a non-binary child, or trans, or confused about anything to do with my identity. And I look at that and think, look, gender-neutral loos, it's absolutely about how you do them, not the existence of them. So I went to a brilliant place in Finsbury Park a couple of weeks ago and came out and met the owner of the building, and I said, your loos are perfect. Each one of them, an individual room, so not a cubicle, a room, so floor to ceiling doors and walls with its own basin, its own hand dryer, and there were women's loos, there were men's loos, and there were gender neutral loos. And what matters is that they are safe, that they are comfortable, they're clean. I can remember going to Heathrow Airport and absolutely judging their new terminal on the quality of their loos. We all do it. And so my message to schools is if you want to introduce gender neutral loos, do it properly, do it cleverly. Don't have cubicles that people can put mirrors underneath the doors. I mean, that's hideous anyway, isn't it? So I just think that we need to have safe spaces for all of our young people to use the loo in comfort and where they're happy. And I can remember going home from school, having not been to the loo all day. Don't want any young person to feel like that.
There's a divide in society, but there's a divide in your own party. There'd be I don't know if it's a lot, but certainly some of your colleagues would say, "God, you're so woke, Caroline. What are you doing in this party?" Do any of those views worry you, or do you feel intimidated by people who attack you and will attack you for what you've just said?
So frequently referred to as woke nokes. Try having a surname that actually rhymes with it. That's no fun. Look, I always challenge back when people say you're so woke. I look at them and say, well, what do you mean by woke? What's the actual definition of woke? And I think we would all agree that it means being aware of those who suffer discrimination, particularly around race. And so look, if people want to accuse me of being woke, I wear it as a badge of pride.
Caroline Noakes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to the first episode of Gloria Meets. I'll be back next Sunday and every Sunday at 6 o'clock. I'll be out and about listening to your stories and getting our politicians to open up, tell us who they really are and what they really think. Have a great evening.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather across the UK. Icy and foggy towards the northeast, with wind and rain in the southwest. Let's take a look in more detail. A few showers for Orkney and Shetland, otherwise a mostly dry start on Monday for Scotland. Cold though, with icy patches and some fog too. Meanwhile, very wet and windy across much of Northern Ireland, with heavy rain arriving overnight. Dry across northern England. In the northwest, temperatures will be a few degrees above freezing, but in the northeast, it will be icy and foggy. North Wales is also looking dry at first. It will be rather cloudy, and further south, there will be heavy rain and very strong winds, which will spread across Wales throughout the morning. Whilst the West Midlands will get off to a mostly cloudy start, for the East Midlands, the skies will be clearer. That does mean it'll be quite chilly though, especially in rural areas. Clear and chilly across much of East Anglia. Here temperatures will be around or perhaps a touch below freezing, so some frost and icy patches are possible first thing. Cloudy for southern parts. In the southeast, it'll be mostly dry, whilst heavy rain and very strong winds will bring difficult driving conditions in the southwest. The wind and rain will continue northeastwards throughout the morning, though northern parts are set to remain mostly dry and sunny. And that's how the weather's shaping up throughout tomorrow morning.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, the return of Donald Trump to Twitter is annoying all of the right people. Are the Tories risking a Brexit betrayal with rumoured plans for a Switzerland-type deal? Do this and the Tories are toast forever. My Mark Meets guest is Brexit-supporting former Labour MP Lord John Mann, who conducted a war against Jeremy Corbyn and won. Plus my all-star panel, politics legend Anne Widdecombe and former England manager Big Sam Allardyce live on the show. Bring a bottle and I'll see you at 9.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
The World Cup kicks off with a comical monologue from FIFA president, and Joe Lycett burns 10 grand. Controversy hits the Mrs. Doubtfire musical, and Donald Trump has somehow found his way back onto Twitter. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie, standing in for Andrew Doyle this week. This is the Sunday night show where we take a look at what nonsense the social media warriors have been inflicting on us in the past week. There is always plenty of material. Coming up on the show, we will be discussing the news from Canada, where Parliament is discussing whether disabled children could be euthanised by doctors. That's incredibly depressing. We'll be hearing about how our poor old MPs have been downing their sorrows with £250,000 worth of taxpayer-funded booze. And the usually calm, reasonable and moderate world of Twitter is about to get a huge shock. Former President Donald Trump is back to delight us with his shrewd observations on world affairs. But before we start with all of that, my studio guests this evening are Scott Capurro and Lewis Schaefer. Gentlemen, you don't have COVID, do you? You haven't been hanging out with Andrew in the last couple of days?
No, AIDS. But, sorry, was that going too far?
Just straight into it. When he called, I was just saying, I'd say the audience, but when Andrew called me and said, I'm sick, do you mind hosting tonight? And I was like, yeah, fine. I was like, who are the guests on? He was like, Lewis is on. I was like, no, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out.
Sorry, that was too much. That was too much.
That was too much.
Would cancer have been funnier?
No.
Okay.
As evidence.
I do miss AIDS. I have to say I miss AIDS. Because with AIDS, it was a good pandemic. It lasted. It lingers still. Yeah. With that one, you had sex with somebody, you got something out of it. With this one, you laugh at the studio audience, you're dead by Christmas, so...
Yeah. I was part of the AIDS generation. I don't know if anybody else is. Anyone else here 46, 47? Sometimes everyone else is dead.
Yeah.
So
they're all gone. Yeah.
it's it was a strange time. Anyway, but you had a good week. You were on telly last night.
I was on telly with you, Josh. Not with you, but you were.
I was around.
You were around, and you were doing a thing, and it was amazing. It was really good, really well done. GB News, no other place will give me a job. So, as you can see why. But so if they fire me, there's no harm, no foul, because I've had 1 year of being on GB News. It's been the most amazing.
It has been. And were you gigging last night?
I was, yeah. Where was I? Oh, I was in Camden, and I walked 3. I still got it.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think they misinterpreted...
Explain what that means.
Yeah, well, it means 3 people walked out of the show and got their jackets up and stormed out and made a point of it.
Yeah.
And I don't understand going to a comedy show and then being offended and, leaving because it's not about you. And I made a joke about immigration. I think they misheard it. I just said that I'm glad they'd lighten the immigration.
Please don't say it.
All right.
Okay, well, look, let's get some questions from the audience. Our first question's from Danny. Hey, Danny.
Hello. The World Cup has started today. My question is, should we be allowed to watch England's opening game against Iran while we're at work tomorrow?
Yeah, so the World Cup in Qatar got underway today with the hosts losing 2-0 to Ecuador. I guess those bribes didn't go through in time. Much controversy over the decision to award the tournament to Qatar in the first place. But now it's up and running and England kick off their campaign against Iran. Another nice cuddly regime there at 1 o'clock tomorrow. So should the country grind to a halt so we can cheer on the team? Now, we have 2 Americans there. I don't even know, are you guys into football at all?
My husband is, so I'm forced to watch if I want dinner. And I was amazed that the country didn't really care about them saying no to gays. But once they canceled the beer in the stadiums, Britain was like, up in arms. We got to draw the line somewhere. And I just feel like one thing after another is going to lead to just a sort of a dour atmosphere.